He thinks he's got a gift that he needs to share with me. That is poverty. Another poverty. He assumes that when he comes, I'm going to simply receive his message, like Socrates, like Malcolm X, like Mahatma Gandhi. That's going to happen. He's going to deal with the fact that people are going to reject him. If God accepted me, surely his creation will accept me as well. Not so. What happened in the end? He died miserably. 12 of his closest people rejected him. The point I'm trying to make is that as long as you're a human being, you will always be incomplete. And when you're aware of your incompleteness, you'll always be discontent. Always. Now, since this is our home, being incomplete, unfulfilled, and discontent, now you'll find people who say, I'm just living for the day, man. I am content. I am happy for today. Thank God I'm breathing. You know, you can use those bumper stickers. That's fine. If that saves you for that day, that moment, good for you. Okay? Now, if this is your lot. Okay. Now, here's Russell. Forgive me, Russell, but since you're a guest, we'll give you the best of what we have to the guests. Okay? This is Russell's wife, Rosie. Okay? And this is their kid, Ross. Now, let's go back for one single moment to Abby, right? Abby's questions about kids. Is it moral to have children? Scenario. Russell is 18. Okay. Who is this? Rosie? Rosie was also 18. What do you think about Russell is an intellectual? You think he's intellectually mature? He's been around the block a couple of times? No, he's an idiot. He's a kid. But despite being a kid, he's got 5 senses. His eyes looks at Rosie and says, oh my gosh, she's attractive. Add to it, there are moments he feels, God put Rosie in my life. Let's just say he's also a religious man. All right? Now, what do 18-year-olds want to do? There comes a point where you want to taste what has given you pleasure through your eyes. What do? You slowly walk towards Rosie. Hi, I'm Russ. And Rosie says, hi, Russell. And all of a sudden says, not only is she pleasing to my eyes, she's also pleasing to my ears. And then he steps closer. So how old are you? Oh man, you smell really good. So remember, when it comes to his eyes, positive. Ears, her voice, positive. Nose, she smells great, positive. And then imagination begins to kick in. I wonder if her skin is as coarse as a crocodile's, or is it soft and velvety? And being the cunning man that he is, he says, can I give you a drink? Get you a drink? Yeah. So he goes and gets a Coke or a Pepsi. And as he is handing it to her, very deliberately, intentionally, his fingertips touch her hand. Ah, soft touch, positive. What remains now is taste. It's too busy here. You want to go and walk around the park, around the lake? Yeah, they're holding hands now and they're kissing. Taste, positive. What do young people want to do, man? This is all positive. Remember what we said. Anything that gives you pleasure, you want it to be repeated. So before she leaves, Russell asks, what's your phone number? Can I text you? Absolutely. At 2 a.m, he texts her saying, Rosie, great to see you, man. Beautiful, thank you. How about tomorrow? Fine. 2 weeks later, they're in bed. What, you think he was planning to have a kid? Huh? What, he wanted to play the Messiah figure for this infant? No, man. All children are nothing but production of sex. That's what it is. Love comes later. Okay? So the first thing you need to understand is Russell and Rosie had Ross because of what we call sex. Not God's creation, not love's creation, sex creation. Nothing wrong with that. Accept this as you accept the fact when you go to the bathroom, you shit. That's how it is. The moment you have a child, sure, compassion, love, care, responsibility, they all kick in. But remember, if you happen to be like the Buddha, that all of life is suffering, you're not going to have children. Because you say, I don't want my kids to go through what I go through. Life is a disaster, man. It's like cancer. It gives you a few moments of happiness and joy and fulfillment, but for the most part, it's problematic. Okay? Now, the other thing you need to understand is this. When Russell, you're yawning too? What is it with you men in this class today? Now, before having kids, Rosie pays Russell about 85% attention. She saves 15% for herself. She does her eyebrows, hangs out with her girlfriends, all that stuff. And he enjoys being a king. He enjoys the attention. He enjoys being pampered. He enjoys having power. It's very addictive, man. You're not there yet, Nayan. Okay, these are just abstract stuff I'm telling you, and you're just laughing because, it's not going to happen to me. It is. So disaster is waiting for you. Just wait. So, are you enjoying this? This is your life, man. Pay attention. You don't need to call 1-900-FUTURE. This is it. And I'm giving it to you for free. Now, the moment they have a child, something very interesting happens. Russell gets 15% attention. She gets 5% attention. The kid gets 80% attention. You think he's going to do well? No, ask him. He'll tell you. I mean, forget now, 10 years later, 4 kids later, he just said, okay, so my wife just looks at me in disgust and walks away. You get used to anything. Huh? Oh, absolutely, man. Okay? Sure. Have a good time. Now, before any external problems that may come about, there are emotions that live inside both of them. She's always exhausted. Always. Especially if you got 4 kids, man, you're ruined. Okay? You, on the other hand, you realize, well, you go to work from 9 to 5, then you take the kids out to park, then you gotta wash dishes, and then you gotta put them to sleep, and then you say, where the hell is my life? I'm not happy. I come home, there's always noise. I want 10 minutes to myself. Now remember, your first child is an accident. Always an accident. Unless you come from a culture like him, where at a certain age, your parents say, it's time for you to get married. That's not this culture. Your first kid is an accident. The second kid you do to keep company the first. So your second child is a toy for your first. And then you tell your wife, I don't know if the third one is an accident or intention, But whatever it may be, the third will be more of a toy for the first and the second. And the truth is, once you have 2 kids, your life is over. You might as well just have 20 of them. From that point, it makes no difference. And the point also is that if you have this kid who's like 10, and you also have a brother who's 8, these 2 will help taking care of a 1-year-old. So the third kid you basically do to babysit the third one. And the 4th one you will have, and the 5th one you will have, you're either a Mormon, you come from an environment where you have 20 kids in a single lifetime, or you say, maybe the 4th one will give me a heart attack, I will die in peace. All right, now, so what you have are lots of personal, internal dialogues that are taking place. There is going to be a good amount of abuse. It's very subtle. It's not blunt, it's not directed specifically at the person. As we say in Persian, you speak to the wall so that the doors can hear, okay? Jokingly you say, you know, it's 5, I've been working all day and there is no dinner. Ha, 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 ha. How about we go to In-N-Out? Yes, you're laughing. Yes, you're joking. Yes, it's funny. But she says, I've been with 4 kids, goddammit. So I was just saying, no, it's okay. You know, I don't mind. Let's go to In-N-Out. It's good food. There comes a point, and remember, none of us ask for any of this stuff. It just happens. There comes a point as Russell goes to work. Now remember, this is internal stuff. This is in-house stuff. And unless it gets to a point where it's boiling, erupting, they will work things out. If on the other hand, you have a seed of unhappiness, that seed beast gets sprouted, and then all of a sudden you have stems coming out, and then you have like flowers of doom and gloom blooming, and then it becomes a huge tree, it's going to fall apart. So if you don't take care of this at a very early stage, these 2 people will walk away. Now here's the thing you need to understand. There used to be a time where religion, parents, culture, elements of shame and guilt, regardless of how difficult life was, it would keep these 2 people together. Okay? Remember, India is a tough place to live. Many parts of Africa is a tough place to live. Middle East is a tough place to live. People have nothing. They stay together. Why? Not because they want to. What, do you want to be in this class? No, you don't. You need to graduate. This is a required course. Once you walk away, most of life is a burden that you have to carry. You didn't ask for it. It's just on your shoulder. Do it. Sometimes discontent and unhappiness comes from a different environment. Russell goes to work. Let's just say he works at Home Depot. Okay? And he has a manager. Her name is Julie. Now what happens when you begin to talk to someone on a regular basis, see them on a regular basis? It's casual conversation, then a flirtatiousness begins to take place, then you begin to imagine them, and all of a sudden, one day you wake up and you say, oh my God, I love Julie. And then you take this stuff home. It's not like you can leave this at Home Depot and walk home clean. It doesn't work that way. Okay. So when you talk about discontent, okay, now let me also mention that because it's kind of rampant in this culture, sometimes when life becomes too burdensome, abuse also kind of puts its head outside and it begins to take shape. Whether someone drinks too much and becomes verbally abusive, emotionally abusive, physically abusive, then yes, it's a good thing for parents to get out, or for the kid. You know, these people separate and the kid kind of is rescued. Now, sometimes the villain comes from the outside. In other words, for the first time in 20 years, Russell is being looked at by Julie. Okay? There was no love. This is all responsibility. Letter of the law. Once in a while, you want to feel your own existence. She makes him feel relevant, attractive. His value goes up. Who wouldn't like that? Would you like me every time your hand goes up to dismiss you? Embarrass you in front of all these people? What's going to happen to your self-image? And every time you say something, I make fun of you? That's not going to make you feel good, is it? Julie makes Russell feel really good about himself. And he goes home. He doesn't want to break the relationship. He says to Rosie, let's go on a trip. But even if they go to Yosemite, he imaginatively takes Julie with him, keeps thinking about her. And before you know it, she's in the middle of all of this. Every time Russell or Julie or Rosie wants to get to Russell, she has to pass through the imaginary Julie. And he gets to a point where he says, I don't want to be here anymore. Because he has felt alive. Now, you can talk about the morality of this. Is it good for him to walk away? Is it good for him to stay? I mean, those are very, very complicated issues. Okay? So when you say it's best for people to kind of separate, the question is, for what reason? Is it because life is tough? If life is tough, just suck it up. Because no one has it easy. If you're talking about something like this, when it blossoms into a thing called love, it's a done deal. You have no choice but to get out. Ivy, and then Neon, and then somebody else. Yeah.
I was wondering, God,
So what?
what do you think of God is such a strong individual?
I mean, it's a really, really complicated, I think, issue. I don't have access to a lot of it. I just know a few, maybe superficial components of it. There are a couple of things. You know, when I lived in Iran, there wasn't any central heat or air. So what we had was basically a heater. You put oil in it, fire comes out and you sit next to it. And how many people lived in this 2-bedroom house? Of 6. You can't be an individual and go to your room, you'll just freeze to death. So what happens? You just go and sit next to other people. And what happens when you sit next to other people? You look at them, you talk with them, you laugh, you cry, whatever the case may be. But you're together because why? Poverty. One of the nice things about poverty, not having, it's kind of like it's a mass movement, like a revolution. Everybody's poor because they don't have justice. Everybody's poor because they feel that life is unequal. So what happens? 50,000 people march the streets. What you have is a cult, is a community of 50,000 people walking together for one same reason. We need justice. Okay? Now, what happens when you have central air and heat? Here's your dad, here's your mom, here your kid, brother and sister, and here you are. Every single room, whether it's the bathroom or the kitchen or the bedrooms, they all have a ventilation system. Okay? So you look at your father and you say, nah. You look at your mom, nah. You look at your brothers, no, I'll go to my room. Even the temperature is 105, your bedroom is 100. You go there, you sit there. There are also components of technology, okay? I don't know, there are a whole host of issues. I think sometimes when you go to Safeway, for example, when a kid is throwing a temper tantrum, the mother or the father is like talking to a 2-year-old, honey, what's going on? Talk to me. And in essence, what they're saying is your emotions as a 2-year-old is profoundly important. Understand it yourself and tell me why you're feeling this way. Use a language that like a Jesus Christ would use. Tell me. And then what you do as a 2-year-old, you kind of basically telling him or her that you're individual, you have value, your emotions have value, talk to me. I mean, that's a good sense of entitlement. When you go to other countries, you see a 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum, you kick him in the face. Shut your mouth. I'm not talking in that particular intensity, but that's what you do. You reprimand them. You're in society, man. I don't care what you want. Keep your mouth shut. Okay? Take care. Okay. It's good to see you, man. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I look forward to it.
You're very kind. Thank you. Thank you. The other thing is, I don't want to talk about video games, that aside, but consider music, for example. For the longest time, music was something you would hear in a public forum. 30 people going somewhere listening. Okay? People could not read, which meant that you would go to church in your village, for example, 1 out of 200 people could only read. For almost 1,000 years in the Christian world, every monastery had maybe 1 or 2 books. Monasteries. I mean, imagine you go to the Laney Library and you could only find 5 books. And all these people going, back and forth, only 2 people can read. Which means what? You go to public masses. So the more proficient you become, the more able you become, the less dependency you will have or need on other people. I mean, look at what's happened to these small, tiny mom and pop stores. Every street has like a market. All of a sudden, Costco comes. What's going to happen? Well, they're going to go away. The more independent you become, ask Russell, he'll tell you. Look, your 5-year-old cries one day, says, "Mom, Dad, bike." Okay, so you go to Walmart and you steal a bike. You bring it home. And you look at your kid and say, "Okay, sit." I don't know how. You pick him up, put him on the seat, you hold the back, okay? You hold your son, and you run with him. There is this really, really devastating moment. I mean, it makes you proud, but also quite sad. Your son looks at you and says, "Dad, stop holding me. Let go of the bike. I can do this myself." You say, "What? You mean I can no longer hold the bike or touch your shoulder or run with you? No, I don't want you anywhere around." Okay. And then you say, "Well, thank God he still can't drive. I have to drive him to school." Then comes a point, "Dad, don't go so close to the school. Your entire thing is embarrassing. Your car is embarrassing. You're embarrassing. Me being around you is embarrassing. Just park over there." What the fuck? And then there comes a point where you say, "I want a car." And then you realize, they have their own car now. They leave at 6 in the morning. They come back home around 1 in the morning. And all of a sudden, what the hell happened, man? You and I used to do this and that. The point I'm trying to make, the more privilege you have in life, the more power you have in life, the less you need other people. Look at that as analogous to, say, having a fridge filled with food. If you go home and you open your fridge and there is nothing in it, you need Safeway, man. That's your life support. You need Costco. That's your life support. You need the telephone to call your mom and say, "Can I come over to eat?" You need that. If, on the other hand, you open your fridge and it's filled with food and you know how to cook, you're not going to pick up the phone. You're not going to think about your mom or call your mom. You don't need Safeway. You don't need Costco. And then the question is, well, if privilege creates independence, and if you don't protect, nourish independence in a right way, if independence can ultimately create loneliness, and then in loneliness you lose the ability to be social, And out of that loss, you have depression. Is independence a good thing? If independence is the outcome of privilege and power, is it best to remain poor and by default live in a community? Or is it better to have power and to be independent and risk becoming lonely, isolated, depressed, ultimately becoming a beast? These are really difficult issues. Thank God that Russell and I are old enough that we only have a few more years to live. You guys are starting, and your foundation, the way you started life, is very different than the way we started life. You have things that we didn't have. In some ways, it's really good, but the things that we had but you don't is detrimental. It may actually be negative for you. In other words, I had no choice but to be with my parents, to live with my parents until I was really, really old, like 35, 40. And then at the age of 60, when I look back, I say, man, I'm so glad I lived with my parents for 40 years. Why? Now I understand how healthy it is to be in a good, decent relationship. If the relationship is abusive, that's a different story. Okay? But the platform, if you come, for example, if you have a mom, if you have a dad, if you have siblings, if you have aunts, uncles, grandparents who love you, take care of you, and you do the same for them, when you go to a party, for example, you don't go because you're lonely. You don't go because you're in despair. You actually have a rich life. You have a lot of good people in your life versus someone who's got no dad, no mom, no friends, no grandparents, no aunts, no uncles, nothing, and goes to a party. They have a good amount of poverty inside them. They yearn, long, scream, someone please look at me. Someone please love me. That is going to be a very, very abusive relationship in the future. Because you just lack so many things in your foundation. Independence is good for someone like Malcolm X, like Mahatma Gandhi. They're not going to abuse it because independence basically means power. It's good that you have won the lotto and you have $355 billion in your bank account. That's great. The question is, do you have the intelligence to use the money properly? Because if you don't, look, weed is really, really good if you got migraine headaches. If you have cancer, if you got some sort of a difficulty with your physical life, physical body, it's really, really good. But when it becomes part of the popular culture, and every 18-year-old tries to create an excuse, I'm doing this because, well, you're drinking coffee, that's a drug, then, yeah, you're using your power and privilege in all the wrong ways. There is nothing wrong with anything, really, just how you use it and whether or not you know how to use it. Anyone else? Shanti? I'm sorry? Look, I think whenever you ask these really difficult, loaded questions, you should try to take them into your own life and see where they fit. Make them very, very, very simple. Think of it this way. If you were 2 and do you have children? Okay, let's say you have a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old kid. Okay, Russell, he's got 4 kids. So when he sends his 4-year-old to school, they come home having only one task: learn the alphabets. Not Chinese, not Arabic, not German, English. Black and white, A, B, C. There are no gray areas, black and white. When you learn your alphabets really, really well, okay, and just in case you can't pronounce A as ooh, it doesn't work. Unless you're watching that movie, what is it called? You know that movie. So there is a right way to pronounce A. You know, if Russell's son went to him and said, Dad, I don't want to say A, I want to say ow. What the fuck is that, man? No one can understand what you're saying. Just say A. You know? And if he continues saying ow, Russell will have no choice but to slap the kid. If he's a bit more kinder, he'll take him to a therapist or some professional. Okay? So A. Now, there comes a point in your child's life where you say to your kid, can you write your name Russell? R-U-S-L-E. You're improvising, but you're improvising on a platform of black and white. You know the alphabets really, really well. The next problem you have to do is, how do you put these words together? Now, spelling is a little subjective. Forget that for now, okay? Now, when you are really good at just mimicking, imitating black and white, there comes a point where you take a philosophy class and the instructor says, write an essay for me. Now you're able to improvise. And what happens when I ask you, tell me about guilt? Okay? Now, you know the alphabets? Now you begin to play with guilt. You say, when I was 5, I looked at my father and I slapped him really, really hard. It's your story. And you tell the story in a way that pleases you and ultimately pleases the reader. But know the alphabets of guilt. If you know something really, really well, then you can play with it later on as you become more and more proficient. It's like kind of like music. When you go and you want to study piano, well, the first thing you do is just look at the sheets, the notes, on paper. And then you go one finger at a time. Then you have to figure out how to place both hands, but each are doing things differently. Then you have to look at your leg. That's doing something different. Then you have to kind of look at the notes, okay, without looking at the keys, and somehow just do the best you can. Then when you have mimicked and practiced for about 20 years, then your teacher says, you know what, I'm going to remove the note sheets. I'm going to turn off the lights. You're going to close your eyes, and I want you to improvise. Well, shit, if you have never played music, if you have never seen a piano, it'd be foolish for someone to tell you, Shanti, sit behind this wooden box and just play. Play what? Anything. And you'll do what most kids do, just bang on the keys. If on the other hand, you're practiced, you've been disciplined, you like piano, you like the music, now after 15 years, you can improvise, and it's like gold. So moral relativism is good if you have studied how human beings are, how they function, the nature of society, the imposition of its forces upon the human psyche, what we call repression. What do you do when you get abused? How much of it do you put inside you? How much of it do you express? How do you express? When you've studied all this stuff, and no one can do all this in one lifetime, and none of us can be very proficient, we do the best we can. But if you have studied what you're interested in, give yourself about 10 years. Be a good student of it. And then you can exercise relativism. You can just wing it. But initially, be very black and white. If you want to get into a relationship, have a chart. No smoking, no drinking, make sure he's educated, make sure he's got money, make sure he's got good with his father, with his mother. That is what you need to look for. When you get into a relationship, then you need to compromise. Then you need to bend the lines a little bit. But if you got no chart, no boxes, and you think you have all the proficiencies to get into a relationship and make it work, it's not going to happen. Especially if you got a crummy foundation. Black and white. Russell, what do you think? Since it's your first day here, what do you think about these people? Oh, I'm sorry. I know you guys have a life out there. I won't keep you any longer. Thank you. Take good care. See you soon.
Another great lecture.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you. Thank you.